So I want to introduce our guest tonight, Marquett Burton. He is the founder of the Fletch app. So I want to welcome Marquett to the show. Marquett, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Greg. It's an honor to be here.
We talked a little bit before the broadcast. You're now residing in St. Louis and just moved from Chicago, correct?
We moved our headquarters from Chicago to St. Louis. We had the honor of being an Arch Grant recipient. So that came with funding and the support of a tremendous community, which is seeking to bring talented entrepreneurs and promising companies down to St. Louis.
Excellent, excellent. So tell us about your educational journey. I found it very interesting in your bio that you finished high school early. You finished college early as well. Tell us how that whole thing developed.
The funny thing is, I think a lot of folks think it's because I'm extra smart, but that's actually not the case. In high school, the counselor goes around during junior year and sits down with this big binder and tells everyone, hey, based on your grades, these are the colleges you should apply to. And when she came to me with her big book, she flipped over the page and ran her finger across my grades and looked me in my eye and said, Marquett, with these grades, I don't think any college would accept you. Why are you still here? Why do you even come to school? You're wasting everyone's time. And for me, that was a wake-up call. I was like, oh, man, I was really counting on going to college because, my living situation at the time with my family was a little bit rocky as they were going through some challenges with substance abuse. So I thought, okay, well, I got to get it together. And consequently, knowing that my grades were so low, I couldn't really go to a proper college, I tested out taking the proficiency exam in California. Then, being in a bit of a rush, I did community college in 1 year. So I do 2 years worth of coursework in 1 year. And then I went to the University of California, Berkeley, studied political science, though at the time I was interested in computer science, but too intimidated. And then following that, having had such a great experience with education and university in general, thinking, why aren't more people from the hood I grew up in here with me? This is a great place. Right. So I decided to do Teach for America and hopefully open up the gate for more folks to come through.
But it's interesting that your guidance counselor really wasn't guiding you to apply to college. It's kind of, when you think of a guidance counselor, you think of like, hey, this person is going to be a positive influence. They're going to tell me the right things to do. They're going to persuade me to higher education. And here it is, they come around to you and they say, you're not going to get into college. Why are you even here?
Right. It was disappointing. In fact, I'd be curious as to, I'm guessing I'm not the only person she said that to. And right. For the many others that may have heard that, how did that affect their life path? For me, I had the unfortunate situation of, my mother was, struggling with addiction. My father was in prison. And so I had such an unstable situation. I knew I needed somewhere to live. So I was going to college, not to go to college, but rather to get the free housing associated with college because I couldn't afford to earn enough to, pay for my own apartment at 16. So that's really why I was going. But, yeah, It's a shame. I think a lot of students in that income situation experience that.
And that's even more interesting when you say it like that, because we think about all the things, especially when it comes between or it comes to black people and white people, and the various different reasons on why one person might attend college and the other person might not. And here you are, most people are attending college and they say, hey, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to, graduate from college. I'm going to come out with good grades, and I'm going to get a great job. And here you are, just worried about where you're going to sleep at, right? And that was your motivation for actually going to college. So it's crazy to kind of see that the different dynamics and mindset with that. What kind of drove you to education?
I truly believe that this is the land of opportunity. Undoubtedly, there are things that will provide people with more challenges, perhaps based on their demographic or their upbringing or their income level.
Right.
But if you can't make it in America, you can't make it anywhere. And I found that that's a function of education. It's a function of what you know and how hard you'll work. But education really opens the door and makes things possible. It makes it possible that, even if your father was a janitor, you don't have to be a janitor. You can learn more and be able to do more as a result of your education. So for me, once I went to University of California, Berkeley, and then obviously got my graduate degree at Johns Hopkins, I found that people would look at that piece of paper and those two big names, and that held currency for them. And so that's why education was so important to me, because it opened up doors. And I think a lot of us grew up in economic challenge. Right. And what really the university is being able to get beyond that. And that's why education was always so important to me, because I felt like it was the real civil rights issue, which is opening up the doors to economic opportunity.
Definitely. Let's get into your app, Fletch, or your company, Fletch, and what it is and how this idea came about.
I'd sent a number of high school students that I taught into university, and then you see them around Baltimore. I did teach for American Baltimore, and but hey, how's college going? How are you enjoying it? Like, you're expecting them to say, "Oh, I'm having the time of my life," but too often it was like, "Oh, I'm taking a break. I'm taking a semester off," which translates to you dropped out, right?
Right.
You're not taking a semester off. You dropped out, and that was really disheartening, because these were poor kids who were poor before they went to college, and then they came out of college with $25,000, $45,000 of debt. So then I worked for a nonprofit, specifically trying to help students graduate high school, earn their way into college, and then we supported them through college graduation. And I found that this nonprofit, though very well funded, was not successful, number one, because they're not able to keep up with young people in college who are just getting free. They're just becoming adults. They don't want you following them around. Right. So it got me to thinking on how we can provide a way to support young people in universities. Then, give you the long version, I was recruited to work for an ed tech company. I visited over 100 universities, colleges, and secondary schools in 1 year. And then you start to notice a trend. And when I'm walking into these college lecture halls and seeing 300 students every time, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. These kids, their whole life, were in a classroom with 25 students. Now they're in a lecture hall with 300 students, 400 students. Advisor to student ratio is 600 to 1 at many of our state schools. They're not supported. They don't have anyone to ask for help. When FAFSA's due, they don't understand the financial aid forms. Neither do their parents. They're not choosing the right courses because they're not getting the advising they need. It's all these breakdowns in support services that occur outside of school. And so I said, okay, I think I can do this. So I decided to found Fletch, quit my job twice. The first time I quit, they said, hey, we like the work you're doing. We're going to keep paying you. We hope you keep working. So then I quit again and been working on this ever since. We've talked about everything, but what is Fletch? Fletch is a simple technology that on the front end for university students, it empowers them to crowdsource help from students taking the same class with any professor. Opens you up to thousands of folks taking the same course. Also, it allows your university to target existing on-campus support services directly to students who need them. So we're talking about financial aid, counseling, career services, advising, tutoring, workshops, office hours, you name it. And also students can request help from their phone. It's almost like a 411 for your university.
What makes your app unique from all these other apps?
Distribution and implementation is a big issue with a lot of these technologies. So if you're at a university that uses Fletch, you're going to find that 90% plus of your lecture hall is actually using Fletch, which means it's going to be a great value when you send out that question because you're cramming at 2 a.m. You're going to get a really quick response, and we're averaging about 13 minutes in terms of response time. And then here's a really important part for colleges and students. We're able to increase utilization of student support services and improve effectiveness of student support services, which means we can tell you if you're taking, say, Calculus 101, you need to go to a Calculus 101 tutor at least twice a week to see a letter grade bump, because sometimes you'll see students go haphazardly to tutors. Now, we can tell you how many times you need to go to get the outcome. We can also tell the university, hey, we've been looking at data on your chemistry tutor. They're actually not leading to any academic improvement. You either need to reallocate those dollars, retrain this person, or fire this person. And so we really can create like a science to achievement, if you will, and show very predictable boxes that a student needs to check if they're going to be successful. We can make sure that, send them a push notification. Did you complete your FAFSA? If you click no, you didn't complete FAFSA, then we're going to connect you with a financial aid counselor who can help you do that. So it's a huge value, and we're the only folks who do that, and we put those student services in the palm of your hands.
Very nice, very nice. What's the adoption rate for the app, and how have you got students to kind of adopt it and use it? Like, what's your strategy for accomplishing that?
So we sell directly to universities. So, for example, we just got Chamberlain College of Nursing set up, and in that case, they actually emailed out all their students the link to download Fletch, a short explanation of what Fletch is, and so that's wave one. Secondly, for the large lecture hall classes, we'll actually have someone show up and get everyone signed up on Fletch in person, meaning show them how to log in, show them a couple basic features, and answer any question that they have. As a result of this, we always have in excess of 90% of the large lecture hall classes signed up onto Fletch. And so it's really easy for us to make sure that we're penetrating the student population in the schools we deploy with. And by the way, the technology is free, so if a university student wants to download and get their friends on, they can go ahead and do that. But we primarily work through the university sharing it with their students.
Gotcha. And so, how do you get the how do you get the university to even take a look at Fletch? What's your approach to them?
Oh, that's an important piece I should have mentioned. So there are 20 million students enrolled in university. About half of those students will never graduate, which is tragic because obviously they drop out with debt and broken dreams.
Right.
For colleges, they lose about $16 billion in tuition alone every single year to dropouts. So being able to retain a student is of high value to a college. In fact, a student is worth about $45,000 to a college. So what we're basically telling them is, hey, we are the folks who can help you optimize and better deliver those student support services so that you can keep your students. And that's the big value that they see in Fletch, and that's why they're willing to pay a small fee per term to help better support students and keep them on track to graduation.
Excellent pitch. I mean, even a small fraction of that that money right there is enough to want to utilize the technology that you're producing. And so, tell us a little bit, kind of how the app works.
Our goal is to make sure the college has to do zero work. So what we'll do is we'll go through all of the links that they provide us in terms of their calendars, their tutoring schedule, their workshops, what have you. We'll catalog and categorize all of the resources they have, and then we'll time release them and push them out to students based on their course enrollment or demographic information to make sure that students are getting it at the right times.
Okay, very, very nice. How do you get feedback, and what's that feedback been like?
The feedback's been phenomenal. And one thing about us is when we started Fletch, we were not trying to create something we could sell. Phase one of Fletch was create a technology that students love. So we wanted to create something that felt like social media but was also highly useful to a student. And for me, being not the best of students, I was thinking about what would help me at 2 a.m. when I'm cramming for a midterm. That's what I was really thinking about when I created the technology. So from students, it's been, wow, this is super useful. I've met a lot more people than I did last semester, which is really important because when you build friendships on campus, that keeps you in college. Right. We've gotten a lot of feedback in terms of improvements. They said, hey, can we do an anonymous posting? Sure thing. We're building that in there. They're happy about their ability to reach out to any classmate because we're actually open network, so it's not like you have to be friends with someone. Also, universities have really enjoyed that. For example, we have a campus in D.C., We have the president of that campus is actually on Fletch.
Wow. Wow. That's excellent, man. I commend you. I love hearing black people, this in this tech industry making moves and making it happen. And I tell you the biggest reason why. You hear so much about Silicon Valley and about what they're not letting us in, and I love hearing about people that are just knocking down the doors themselves and really not caring about just what Silicon Valley is letting us do or inviting us in or anything. You're making your own way. You're building a business. And I just have to say, my hat's off to you, man. I love hearing about that. I love seeing it happen. It's a great thing.
Oh, Greg, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I see you're doing the exact same thing.
Trying to. not at the scale you are, but I'm definitely trying, man. So how did you go about actually building the platform? How, and take us through, your initial, I guess the initial part of building the app. Like, did you prototype it first, and then where did you go from there? How did you begin to build your team?
Oh, those are the important parts of entrepreneurship. So I'm happy to elaborate on that if I can save anyone from going through pain. Right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
First thing I did was a lot of learning. And I know you as an engineer and technologist know about this. You're constantly learning. So first I had to teach myself UI, UX so that I could at least wireframe the entirety of the app and create some semblance of a user experience and really have a good understanding of how I wanted the technology to function, what I wanted it to do before I could even figure out if students were interested in potentially using something like this, and then later on figure out if someone would be willing to build it, right? Because idea people, business people come a dime a dozen. Technologists who will sweat and build your product are very rare, especially if you're talking about black technologists.
Right.
So the first thing I did was wireframed it, got the idea, did some market research. Then once I had a look and had created a web page, just a landing page, I then went to a Startup Weekend Los Angeles. I pitched this at Startup Weekend LA. We created a prototype that weekend over a 75-hour period of very little sleep. Then we won Startup Weekend. We were offered about $25,000 from I think it's Imagine K5 was the name. I don't want to get that wrong. I'm pretty sure it was Imagine K5. But they didn't seem like a good group of people. We talked to some of their previous portfolio companies, didn't hear good things, so we decided not to do the deal. But the good thing is that it had created a prototype, and it showed me that there was demand for this product.
Very interesting, and thank you for that information. I know there's people out there with amazing ideas, and they kind of get stuck in the beginning phase because they don't know where to go from, with their idea. What are the next steps? How do I go about building my team and things of that nature? So I definitely appreciate you giving us those jewels of information. So what is it that you look for in a team member?
The number one quality is, will you work for free? I don't want you to work for free. But if you wouldn't work for free, you're not someone I want to work with. As a founder of a company, I've traded in every comfort I've had. And my comforts meant a lot to me because I grew up in poverty with very little. So once I was able to acquire, a convertible BMW, buy my own home, you think of these things as like things that make you feel like you've made it out of the gutter.
Right.
But you have to trade those things in when you start your company. You have to sell the BMW. You have to let your house go into foreclosure. You have to, I never had a credit card my entire life because I didn't believe in credit. You have to take on your first credit card. You have to take on debt. And you're doing all of this without a paycheck. And when you're bringing on folks, either giving them equity or giving them pay, you're never going to find anyone as passionate about you are, because it's like it's your own baby. But you do want to find people who are very hardworking, who at least understand how passionate you are and are willing to put something on the line. People who are going to stick it out maybe when you can't make payroll one month. People who can see the future vision and value. And those are the people I look for. And to figure out if you're that person, I definitely want you to work without being paid, to see where your head is and see where your work ethic is.
Very, very good advice. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I always, you know, tend to struggle with running Blacks in Technology at times. Of you know, you want to find good people, but you know, you have this drive and you have this passion, and sometimes you're just afraid to you know, take a chance on someone because you don't think that they're going to have that same drive and passion that you have. But I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, you know, they're not, you know, they're not going to have that exact same passion and same debate, but they might have passion and drive. It might not be up to your level, but that's okay, right? As long as they have a passion and a drive for it, then you can work with them. So, what's been your biggest challenge so far in creating this app?
I think as an entrepreneur, it seems like there are only 2 days, right? There's the worst day you ever had, and there's the best day you ever had, and you keep going back and forth between the two. So hard to say what the biggest challenge has been. I'd say being balanced on a personal level, because as you mentioned, with Blacks in Technology, you work so hard on it. Right. And when you work hard on something you love, which in this case is this company and our mission, it crowds out everything, right? It crowds out your family, it crowds out romantic relationships and friends, because you're basically only talking to your business contacts and your employees, right? And potential clients. And so I'd say the biggest challenge for me has been being balanced. And a lot of what I've been working on recently is how can I contribute? You know, how can I bring more Black folks through who want to learn technology, who want to learn entrepreneurship? How can I encourage more people to go into technology who wouldn't have otherwise? How can I contribute, you know, outside of my business?
What's next for Fletch? Where do you see this going next?
We hear a lot of folks, even in the political sphere, saying we need more people in college. Right. We don't. We have a lot of people in college. We need more people successful in college, and that's where the conversation needs to be. So we want Fletch to be the leader of that conversation, meaning we don't need to push more people in college yet. First, we need to help the people who are already there be successful. Right. That's going to come through being able to support them as a whole student, not just in the class, but also outside of the class with financial aid, counseling, advising, things like that. So we want to lead that conversation. That's where I see Fletch becoming a thought leader.
Very nice. And it's everything that you're saying. It resonates with me so much. So what's next for you?
Building a family, settling down, maybe in New Holland, Pennsylvania, and doing more travel internationally. Especially as a Black person, it's really important to get outside the country and really see what it is to be a Black person out in the world, right? Interesting, I just got back from Dubai last week, and when I was walking around Dubai, before I said anything, people were like, "Oh, you're from Africa." And I was saying, well, not quite. Not directly. And then I started talking, and I started talking, and they're like, "Oh, you're from America," and just seeing, like, you know, how people view you. But also the interesting thing is, a guy in the airport was telling me before I got to Dubai. He's from Saudi Arabia. He was saying, he says, they have a problem with Black folks in much of the Arab world. And I said, "Oh man," I was like, "That's a shame because I'm going to Dubai." He says, "No, you don't have to worry about that because you're not Black. You're an American." And I thought that was also really interesting in terms of identity. Yeah, he says, "You're not Black there, you're an American." I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I say all that. So your nationality overcame your race in Dubai. Interesting. In Dubai, that's right.
In Dubai, yeah.
Right? Isn't that something, right? Because they see you as a person from a wealthy place. You're a first world person.
Wow.
Whereas if you're just black without being from America, then you're a person from a lower place. You're a third world person. So
Wow.
that was interesting to me in getting it. Yeah, yeah. So there's a big world to see.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. So, how can people, if they want to get in contact with you, or they want to follow you on Twitter, and they want to download the app, how give us that information.
Certainly. You can download the app at www.fletchapp.com. You can also follow us on social media at fletchapp.com or facebook.com/fletchapp. Or you can find me as well at MARC, that is Mark at fletchapp.com, and happy to answer any questions or be of assistance. I do a lot of work around entrepreneurship, pitch coaching, writing business plans, you name it. So happy to contribute, and that's where you can reach us.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Mark, I definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, sharing your experience in building Fletch. It definitely sounds like you're doing big things, and I see bigger things happening for you and your company in the future. Let us know if there's anything that the Blacks in Technology can do. If you if you want promotion, anything, just let me know. Shoot me an email. You have my email, and we'll definitely make something happen.
Well, I definitely will, and I'm so honored to be here and humbled, and I really admire what you do. It means so much because, as you have been, I've been the only black technologist at the conference, and so if there's anything I can do as well, please let me know, and we'll definitely promote you and share us on our social media. And thank you very much, Greg.
Thanks a lot, Mark. You have a good night.
You too.
All right, take care. And that's it for this episode of the Blacks in Technology Big Tech Talk podcast.